Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. His priorities while serving the 2nd Congressional District of Virginia are jobs, strengthening our military, controlling federal spending, and changing Congress. So why, after serving 3 terms, is Congressman Scott Rigell stepping down? We'll get the answer to that question because he's here with us today in the Another View studio, along with his wife, Teri. And we're going to pick their brains about life in Washington, the future of the Republican Party, and what's next in the lives of Rigell. Why Mr. Rigell is leaving Washington. Stay tuned. Another View is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. I am so excited to welcome our guest today on Another View. Congressman Scott Rigell represents the 2nd Congressional District in Virginia, and also joining us is his better half, Mrs. Teri Rigell. Welcome to you both. Back again, and Teri, you for the first time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I was delighted to get the invitation, and especially when you were kind enough, and I think wise enough to invite Teri. She's a delight, an amazing encourager to me, and I think she's served this district well. As if you could say that, the First Lady of Virginia too. She's really poured her heart and soul into this, and I'm grateful for her.
Actually, Teri didn't know that while we were at the Women of Distinction luncheon, that her daughter and I were conspiring.
Okay.
So that's how this happened.
Where this came together. So I am so happy to have both of you here. So a lot of talk about the fact that you shocked the world.
Okay,
a couple months ago, Scott, when you said, I'm done.
Well, Barbara, let's and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show and to talk about it. I think if we look at for us, it'll be a 7.5-year journey. I ran full time 17 months and will have served 6 years, so it's a 7.5-year pull. Mm-hmm. And I can look you straight in the eye and just say with absolute integrity that serving in Congress was truly not on the bucket list of life. Now, let me say it's I think the singular honor for me to have served outside of anything with our family and our children. But outside of that, I mean, this is it. What a privilege it is to walk in the halls of Congress. I mean, as rough as things are in our country and as dysfunctional and with all the resentment that we might have toward different elements and frustration with Congress, to walk those halls, a lot of good things have happened there. Yeah. And we've made progress as a nation there. And so I'm incredibly grateful for it. But I had I think a certain purpose in mind in seeking the office at the time. And we may disagree over this, but it's okay. But there was one party had all 3 levers, House, Senate, and White House. And that makes me a little nervous. And I think my concern principally has been our fiscal house. Right. And it concerns me where we're headed and where we are. And frankly, I know it concerns any thinking American, regardless of where one is on the political continuum. So I sought to serve for that reason. And but I also sense, too, that I can do a lot of work outside of Congress. And I'm not in any way referring to like a lobbyist or anything. I'll never do that. But just keep fighting for our country.
And keep things moving. So, Teri, take us back, because I've always been curious about this, especially for a first-timer who decides to run for office. Tell me about the conversation that you and Scott had when I'm assuming he came in one day and said, honey, I think I'm going to run for Congress. Is that? That's
pretty accurate. He had some former Congresswoman Thelma Drake invited us to lunch and asked him if he would consider running for the job. And at that point, he said, thank you, Thelma, and changed the subject. And we got out to the car afterward, and I went, that was weird. I mean, he didn't even ask a question about it or anything. And I said, what was that about? And he said, I was so shocked and taken aback. I really had no idea that was coming. And so that began the process of trying to determine whether we would do that.
So from your perspective, what were some of the questions, what were some of the things that you had questions about or that you were concerned about as you're transitioning? Both of you owned the car business at the time, right? What was going through your head in terms of what this means for our family, for our business, for our life here?
Well, that is one thing that we did is we brought the family together. We have 4 children, and all 4 now are married. We're not then, but 2 of them were, and we brought their spouses in, and we had a family discussion about what do you think about this, and do you think it's a good idea, and like families do, and everybody said, yes, Dad, we think you should do this. And then began the process of going out further and beginning to test the waters with other people and what did they think. And one thing I loved about something Scott did during that time is when he went out to talk to people, he said, I'm not necessarily the person, so please don't tell me just what you think I want to hear is, yes, you should run for Congress, because that's not what I want to hear. What I want to hear is, let's find the best person that we can find to run. And if you don't think I would be a good fit, please tell me, and let's recruit somebody that would be. And I loved that about him, that it wasn't about him. It wasn't about me. It was about, let's get the best person that can do the best job.
So, Scott, were you politically inclined prior to?
Well, I've always known that leadership matters. It matters who leads WHRO. It matters who leads a nonprofit, a church, a business. It matters who leads our nation and who serves in Congress. And so I've always tried in my own way to help good people move a little farther. And I've declined, a request earlier in my career to run. I said, no, that's not what I do. That's what you do, whoever's recruiting me perhaps. And I actually, if we go back in time, and this was January of 2009, it was an extraordinarily difficult time in our economy. Our automobile business was really, really hurting. We were losing money every month, and we didn't lay anybody off, but it was just a very scary time economically. And so the initial thing that we shared with those who were asking us to run was, no, this is not the right time. And I was okay with that. And about 2.5 months went by, and I'd set that decision aside. And I heard someone speak at an event here locally, and the person said, are you unhappy with the Republican Party? And I thought, yeah, I am. And are you troubled by the direction our country's headed? And I was thinking, I certainly am. And he said, our country is worth fighting for. And Barbara, it was at that moment that an completely unexpected wave of emotion hit me. I was asked to run 2.5 months ago, and I said no because my business is having a difficult time, and this would be difficult and all those things. And it hit me. I thought, well, what if everybody says this?
Yeah.
What have you got? We're not a dictatorship in this country. We have the great gift of a representative republic. It requires men and women to set down their plowshare, figuratively speaking, and go up there for a season. So that's when I came home and I said, Teri, I've got to know I was willing. And that's what started this deliberative process. Now, it ultimately led to a clear sense of we need to run. And then I thought, well, if I'm running, I'm running to win. And so it was a full-time endeavor for 17 months. And it was shocking at first because part of it is in this environment that we all operate now with social media, some of what can come back at you is just, you have to kind of get used to that because it's pretty rough.
You have to have a tough skin.
You do. You have to just press forward, though.
So before I give you the opportunity to talk about all your accomplishments, I want to ask you about what was the most frustrating thing that you found in terms of serving?
Up in Washington? Well, if you think about it, just imagine 435 people lined up. So to get your voice heard, to elevate the things that you think are important, it's inherently challenging just because of that. And you're with other members who, more often than not, really, they're sharp, both sides. And so that is, it's not totally discouraging to me, but that part of it is kind of a challenge. Now, I learned, because as a business person, as a person who likes to fix things, as an entrepreneur, I was thinking, why is this place not working? And I gave a lot of thought to that. And one of the things that I came to a clear conclusion on was that not just redistricting, but hyper hyper redistricting has really hurt our country because, and this is of an encouragement to me, Barbara, because we don't have to live this way. We can change this. It's going to require a lot of effort. We only have 4 years to do it, by the way. But we have, the House in particular, of course, is much more separated than the American people are. There are differences, and there always have been and will be. But the House of Representatives is really at more of the extremes of both parties than America is. And I can prove that empirically. I mean, I'm a numbers-based, evidence-based person. And it's clear to me that, we went from a bell curve, and I know your listeners can't see this, but we went from a bell curve that looked like this, where most of the people were in the center.
Center, right.
And now it's inverted. It's really, the bell curve is inverted. So both of
the extremes are the ones that are running.
And so we can name post offices, and we can do some other things that are of a lighter weight, but the really heavy lift, the things that we must do to prosper as a people, it's almost become mathematically impossible to get to 218 because men and women like being members of Congress, and they're not bad people. They're good people, but they like being there. And so
Scott,
we wanted to get reelected.
If people such as yourself, and there's another congressman from Virginia who's also stepping down, Robert Hurt, you're young, you're energetic, you haven't been there long enough, or perhaps you have to become jaded. If you all leave, how do we change the gridlock?
Well, first of all, I really am flattered, and I mean this, that you'd kind of put me in a group that ought to stay, and I mean that. First of all, the world's bigger than me, and a lot of good men and women are seeking office and are seeking to. There's others that'll come behind us. The real key for me was, somewhat it was very clear to us on a family level that my time was coming to a close, and I saw this exit ramp coming up at this, and I knew I needed to take it. But importantly, Barbara, maybe this is part of the message here today on the show, and even for me to kind of realize this, is that a lot of work is going to be done in Washington, but I really believe that our country is going to be healed and fixed and be set on a different course really by what happens at home. And that may sound a little esoteric at surface level, but there's substance behind it. By that I mean, I think I want to lean into this redistricting issue. I'm not letting go of it because we can do better. Now, I think I can actually advance it better being outside of Congress. Now, I do believe I'll use what I learned and all the relationships and friendships that I have.
So what would you do differently with the redistricting?
Well,
I know what's before the Supreme Court now.
Well, naturally, they ruled. I mean, in terms of let me speak at the kind of the 40,000 foot level across the country. What's happened is I say we as American people, over the last 30 to 40 years, we become increasingly more sophisticated in our ability to draw the lines because of technology, demographic information that we know now. We used to be able to say how a state voted, then a county, then a city. Now we can say not only that, but a neighborhood down to the street, down to 1301. Okay, stop right there because that's the last Republican voter. Now 1303, that's when you start getting into your Democratic friends. So what happens is when redistricting comes up, it's done at the state level. Members of Congress can weigh in lawfully on this matter. And where do most members of Congress come from? The General Assembly. Right? So they have friends there. And the governor usually wants to keep his majority. So for every Democrat I can take out of a Republican seat, give it to my Democratic friend, everybody's happy. And conversely, every Republican that can be taken out of a Democratic seat and sent over to a Republican seat, we're happy. Because that means it's going to be that much easier to get reelected. And you kind of like this job. People call you congressman or congresswoman. You always have a nice parking place up front. And all these other things.
To it,
okay,
right?
So it's just a natural. I'm not in the business of judging people. I'm just trying to say, hey, I get it. How we got here, we can't live this way because what's happened. It's largely happened outside of conscious thought of the electorate. I didn't really think about redistricting, how it was done when I was a hardworking business person. It never really crossed my mind. It happened in Richmond. Not anymore. Hey, I'm a citizen, and this is hurting my country. This is hurting. So
you have a different perspective on being a citizen now.
Oh, It's enlightened. I mean, I always worked hard, I think, and I voted, but now I'm a citizen activist in the best sense of, and that's the only way our nation works. In fact, it's the only way it's ever worked.
Teri, do you have a different perspective now also on how our country is run and being a citizen?
Definitely how it's run. I mean, I've been able to observe what he's going through and trying to get a bill passed and all the other demands on his job, and so that's been something that was surprising. And of course, unless you're in it, you don't fully grasp. But definitely being involved and trying to, say the right thing and do the right thing for whatever for your community is really important. And I definitely have learned the value of that from watching.
So the fact
watching
that
him.
he's leaving Washington does not mean you all are leaving politics in that sense.
Well, politics, if that's a veiled reference to are you going to be doing anything else? I told somebody on the phone right before this interview, we weren't talking specifically about the interview, but I said he was suggesting that Scott should run for Senate. And I said, well, believe me, there are no plans to do that. And I'm not being coy or with really in my back pocket. Yeah, we're really going to do this. I'm not really. But I said, you know what? Like Scott said, this was not on the bucket list.
And so you never know whether it's going to come back around.
I can never say never now because I just don't know. But
I hesitate to even break into the two of you talking. But the way I've described it to one person, I think when they ask about these kind of things, I said, well, I guess the sun could rise in the west and set in the east. I mean, it's about as likely as that. I don't see it. But I think it's unwise, Barbara, to make declarative sentences out there about what you're going to do or not do.
Because you don't know what the future holds. That's very true. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking with Congressman Scott Rigell and his wife, Teri Rigell, and we're going to get into another discussion.
Sure.
that I want to bring up with you, and that is with the presumptive Republican nominee for president. There has not been a welcoming, I think it's safe to say, of Latinos, Hispanic heritage folks,
right.
African Americans, anyone of a minority nature, it seems. It seems to me that the Republican Party has missed an opportunity to bring in these groups because, one, they're the browning of America. It's going to be important to have Republican members from these groups. But it just seems to me that there's been a deliberate alienation as opposed to an inclusiveness. What would you say to that?
My view on Trump as our nominee is on record. And I sent a clear letter in Virginia's 2nd Congressional District the night before our primary. And I was very clear about my repudiation of him as a candidate. And it troubles me that this is where we are as a Republican Party. I think we've derailed in that sense. I just sense that he's appealing to the prurient side of life and of the way our society is kind of hardwired. I think the rough talk and the coarseness of it, all of it, just offends me. And now I'm not saying this simply because I'm on your show and you might have a different demographic in terms of how folks are voting. I'd say the same thing if I was on a conservative show. That's been always very important to me that I'm consistent. I mean, you
have been. That's why I wanted you to come back.
What I'm saying now,
conversation.
It could be aired at any Tea Party rally or what. I mean, I'd say the same thing. I'm really troubled by this, and I'm among those. I don't know how many there are who are so alienated by the presumptive nominee here that I won't vote for him because nor am I going to vote for the alternative in the major party, Secretary Clinton. She doesn't merit, in my view, that vote either. So for the first time in my life, and really in some ways stunned to even be here at this place and to say I couldn't have envisioned that I'd be saying to you that I'm going to literally write in a candidate on Election Day, because I think a proactive vote for someone, I think to some degree, not that you take all responsibility for everything they say and do from that point on. You really can't, because you don't know if somebody's going to go sideways on you. But I can't elevate him. I can't be part of that. I can't live with that.
Were you surprised that Paul Ryan
gave
his endorsement?
I was just, let's put it this way, I'm very disappointed. I thought that was our last line of defense of the party that I believe in and really want to be associated with.
So Scott, beyond Donald Trump,
okay,
take him out of the equation.
Hard to do, but we'll try.
And I get that. But what is it about the Republican Party that makes it so difficult for them? Since this is an African American show, I'll talk about African Americans. But why is it so hard for them to, one, want to attract African Americans to the party, two, to actually do things that would bring people in?
Well, maybe I'm not all that sophisticated a thinker, but let me just take you through my logic flow, because it's going to end right back up at gerrymandered districts. At least there's some connection here. Mm-hmm. Let me say eye to eye right here on your show, I've never heard, I mean this literally, I've never heard a racist statement out of my colleagues and the Republican colleagues in private or in person. I mean, I haven't. Okay. I mean, I'm just telling you that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't say it if it weren't true. So, I mean, they haven't just said things that are racist. I don't think that's an inherent, in fact, I think there's a goodness in people on the Democratic side and the Republican side. What happens is, look at the district from which the members are coming from. See, we've bifurcated ourselves, and so we're in districts that overwhelmingly look like us, and people think like, and so they're reinforced every time they go home.
Okay, and I get that, but at the same time, why aren't they still reaching out, trying to do something different? You look at your convention, at the Republican convention, it looks like a sea of white people.
You know what? Look, I mean, Barbara, when I came home from State of the Union. The night that I came home, because we usually give our ticket to someone else, we get one ticket. Mm-hmm. Teri's been there though one night, and we got home. She said, "Scott, I was struck by this. The Republican side and the Democrats, it's just totally different. A sea of white and a sea of color." And I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, it's disproportionate. Mm-hmm. It's disproportionate on the Democratic side to some degree, and it's same on the Republican side. And this is something that." Something's got to give here. It's just not healthy for our country. Again, I think I can go back into it at some point, but the way these district lines are drawn is hurting our country.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Congressman Scott Rigell and his wife Teri about life and politics. Congressman Rigell represents the 2nd Congressional District here in Virginia. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Our phones are lit up. Let's talk to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Rigell.
Hey, Mark.
Good. Just want to say thank you so much for your service, Congressman Rigell.
Thank you.
You mirror, believe it or not, Senator Jim Webb. I just see you two. I mean, you're on two different parties, but you two men are basically the same. He did one term and came out and said, "Well, I think I can do more on the outside." And you went in and you said, "I think I can do more on the outside." But the honest-to-God truth is that you guys come out of the lineage of Owen Pickett, Congressman Whitehurst. These were men among men, where when people reached out, they reached back. And so if individuals like you and Senator Webb, if that environment is so toxic, and I mean, you can say it is or not, but it's something about that environment that's keeping gentlemen like you and Senator Webb from being able to turn the ship around. And then lastly, I'd just like to say is that I think both of you have the confident mindset to basically say, because I look at it just from the outside looking in, and I say, here are a group of individuals who are educated, who are already tied into the streams where they can make a living. And to my just oblivion, I say, what more do they want? Because really, if you want to go back, the founders, when they went to Philadelphia, they didn't want to go. They didn't want to stay.
That's
they
right.
had businesses to run. They had opportunities that they wanted to seize. So it was painstaking. And when I look at the job that is supposed to be done, that job is really a pain in the behind. And so it baffles me, who wants that job for 20 years?
Okay, Mark, let's let the
Well,
congressman answer. Thanks so much for your call.
I enjoyed listening to him. And first, Mark, I'm humbled by the kind words. I think highly of Senator Webb, and I had a nice visit with him at his office when I first got in. We're fellow Marines. He had quite a more challenging career in the Marines and service than I did in the Marine Corps Reserve, but there's still a bond there. And I don't want you or anyone else to think that my departure at 6 years was in any way, a capitulation or anything. I'm actually very much engaged in this fight for our country, and I'm pretty charged up about what I can do with more time. One thing I didn't have, Mark, was time. I wanted time to think. I love this little quote that it's a journal entry that John Adams had in his diary that he kept every day. And this one day, his only little diary entry was this, 3 words: at home, period, thinking, period. And I just looked at that and went, oh, it'd be nice to really be able to stop and really give critical thought. And that's what I've been trying to do, is to, I guess maybe it's a naivete idealism and kind of fused together, but to me, this is a problem to be solved. The state of our nation. Mm-hmm. We can apply force to this, a constructive force. And so I've been working on that. What's wrong with our country, and how do we get back on track? The country's going to change. That's all right. A lot of things can change. I mean, tattoos, all this other stuff. Okay. But, that's cultural. But what are those things that just have to be held on to, that have to continue from one generation to the next? And find a way to hold on to those, let the other stuff go. And
I smell a book coming.
Well, it's a calling, Barbara. Maybe that was the setup. But as you and I were talking before the show began to air, I used to come home and talk about specific bills when I got home, especially my first year of service, because I didn't know any better. I mean, I figured that's what everybody wanted to know about. But more often than not, eyes would glaze over when I started getting into specific legislation. But then across the political continuum, people would ask me, what's happening to our country? I mean, this is from the far left, the right, everybody in the middle, people fed up with all of it. And I started to think, I need to address this as to what's happening. And I would always encourage people, because I'd see people checking out, and they'd literally say to me, I'm giving up on our country. Whoa. That really troubled me. Apathy's seductive call. And so I would often close my remarks with, look, be mindful that apathy is going to call on you, and we need to be deliberate in rejecting that and choose instead to be constructively disruptive in fighting for our country.
Constructively disruptive is very different from the lack of civility that we see going on now.
Let's start out with just the title of the President of the United States. I was born in a home where it was a yes sir and no sir home. My father, an Iwo Jima veteran, is doing really well at 93, believe it or not.
That's great.
And I was raised to show respect to the office and to and also basic respect for individuals. Out of our core faith, for me, it starts with just we're created. And I don't want to get off on a religious tangent, but I can't describe it without saying it. Sure. It's we're created in the image of God. I mean, from the 8 billion people, we all look different. So, I mean, the way I approach it is every individual is worthy of basic respect. I mean, unless they've done something horribly disqualifying. And think about this too, Barbara. The hallowed fields of Arlington. There are no Republican tombstones. There are no Democratic tombstones. And this leads me to this basic core proposition. In fact, it's more than a proposition. It's foundational with me. My Democratic friends have a seat at the table. Doesn't mean I agree with them, but they have a seat at the table. And then I'm going to try to do what? I'm going to try to establish the facts. which is very difficult. Just that's one thing. Now that has been. You asked me what was frustrating in Washington. I should have led with that.
Establishing the facts.
I couldn't believe it. I'd be on the House floor. You'd hear one set of accusations, and you think, well, that was pretty compelling. Then you hear the other side. You go, well, that can't be true. That's pretty compelling.
Wow.
And you think, let's just sort the wheat from the chaff, and let's get down to the facts. And then, because that's how I've made decisions all my life as a business person. That's been very difficult.
It is different than running a business, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Certainly in that sense.
Teri, when you talk with other congressional wives and talk about what's happening in the country, this idea of civility, do you all talk about that and what's happening with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a concern everywhere because we're all dealing with just the lack of civility, and especially social media. It's just something that's really rampant, and people can disagree with you, but many times they just are so hateful in their disagreement and in the way that they say things.
I think of when Malia announced that she was going to take the gap year. Obama announced the gap year, and the comments on social media, when people have been taking gap years forever, number one, it used to be thought of something just for the very privileged.
Right.
And because she is doing this year, was all kinds of, go back to Africa. And I mean, it was just horrible. Oh. And you think about that for a young person. What are we teaching our young people?
It's a toxic cancer, and we'll never eliminate it completely. But we're still grappling with this. And the little book that you mentioned, one of the things I'm addressing in it are the mobile devices that we have with us, and it's allowed us to personalize our news. Oftentimes we'll just be listening to news that reinforces what we already believe, and the whole time we're going, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And that can really be divisive, I think, unnecessarily. But just the tone of how we engage one another. I've always said and believed and tried to demonstrate in my service that civility is not weakness. Not
Absolutely. At all. Our phones are lit up, so let's go
to
our callers. Howard joins us from Hampton. Hi, Howard. You're on the air.
Yes, this is Howard from Hampton. My one question for Mr. Rigell is, what can general public do to help with the redistricting and just to get it out of the hands of the General Assembly, or at least do something to help improve the redistricting problem?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Howard. I came along to this realization, and it really was, you might even call it an epiphany, somewhere along the line, that this was really hurting our country. And I was actually pleased to find out that there were others that had come to this conclusion before me. And we're already doing something about it. There is a kind of a coalition. It's bipartisan. Former Lieutenant Governor Bill Bowling is part of it, and others. Howard, if you'll leave us your number, something like that, Barbara, I'll make sure that we make this information available to you, that I'm going to be active with that group. And it's never going to be perfect, but we can do better than we are doing now. And I think to the extent
this is a grassroots. From citizens?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's very much a grassroots. And this is happening across the country. And I can show empirically that when we've been so deliberate, without ill intent, but just we've been very deliberate in making it easier for incumbents to get elected of both parties, it's made it far more difficult to find the common ground needed in the House of Representatives.
That's just incredible. What did you find, Teri, most surprising about this entire process? Now that you've had 7 years, really, to kind of digest it all, what was the most surprising thing to you?
One of the very simple things was just that sometimes they operate at strange hours of the night. I mean, I was just like, you have been up all day, and now you're trying to go vote and make decisions at 2:00 in the morning. It doesn't happen all the time, but I'm just thinking, who can even make a good decision at that time of the day? And it was weird to me that that it worked like that sometimes.
And this is very personal, so you can say, "Don't." I'm not going to answer that, Barbara. But, but the dynamic between the two of you as a married couple, because he had to be away, and so forth. Did that change? Did you guys have to do different things to compensate?
You know, as the young people would say, let's get real.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Teri. I'd like to hear how you answer it.
It was very stressful because the demands on his time were incredible. Just from everything that he had to do legislatively. Fundraising never ceased because it's every 2 years, and so you have to be on top of that at all times. So there was always that pulling on you. And then your family, I mean, sometimes you would feel like I would have to get with his scheduler and
Make
schedule.
Yes. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Just to make sure that it happened. And that would help him because he'd see things coming down the line and mentally he could plan for it. But it's just, there's so much coming at you that it is very stressful. And luckily I have a wonderful husband who's very purposeful about making sure that he doesn't serve up there and come back home to an empty house.
Absolutely.
He's been very, very good about that all of our marriage.
I didn't want that. I mean, that would have been a terrible thing. I call them. I'd use the examples of keeping all the plates spinning, and to be an effective member of Congress. I mean, not just to go up there and vote as the conference recommends and take the talking points from the conference and put them out as your own. To be an effective member, to really try to shape the institution and change it. That's an extra amount of work. And then we are in a district that looks like America, which is a good thing. We need more districts that look like Virginia, too. It's a competitive district. That's a good thing. So, I mean, you have to campaign hard here. You have to raise the funds, and then just trying to be a good part of the family to keep every plate spinning. Every now and then I go, I can't. This one's going to hit the floor, and that was tough.
Do you have grandchildren there?
We do.
Oh, okay. So that's another reason why you're coming home. Steve Corneliuson, who I'm sure that name is familiar to you. He is with very involved in the whole Fort Monroe project, and he asked this question. Bipartisan political momentum is growing for unifying the split national monument, a form of national park, along the Fort Monroe Bayfront. Sensible development would still take place, just not on the Bayfront. What's your view?
Well, on these matters, and this isn't like a capitulation of my judgment, but on these matters that are very intensely local, I mean, the citizens who were there, the City Council of Hampton, and of course the Fort Monroe Authority and all of them, I kind of immerse myself, and then I say, okay, let's move forward. There are some who would just set aside and keep everything as a park and really no commercial development. That's like one end of the continuum. The others, at the very extreme, it'd be heavily commercialized and very little green space and very little protected area. Well, the Scott Rigell approach is there a principled compromise that we can advance here that would, we are a nation of industry and building, but also preservation of our natural spaces and our historic spaces. And I tell you, that was one of the highlights. Was actually being part with then Mayor Molly Ward, now Secretary for the Commonwealth there, of working with her and others, Bobby Scott and the rest of the coalition here, delegation, to get that to be a national monument, Fort Monroe. That was a big deal. And by the way, I went over there when the president signed it into law, and I stood behind him with others, and I thought, you know what, somebody's going to misuse this picture, and I knew that. And I thought, I'm going.
Oh, my goodness.
Barbara, it showed up about 6 months later in a horrible direct mail piece put out by a group called the National Association for Gun Rights, saying Scott Rigell is advancing President Obama's gun legislation. And it was just, welcome to my world.
Wow.
But I knew that. But I thought, you know what? I am proud of what we've done. This was the right thing. I know this show has an African-American central theme, and it should. That was where General Butler gave safe refuge and said, okay, you want to call them contraband? Okay, it's a perverse definition, but we're going to use it against you on the South. We're going to protect, provide a haven. And it's the only fort that has the moat and for other reasons it needed to be preserved in that way. So it was a neat win.
Okay, let's see if we can get one more call in.
Sure.
Councilwoman Shannon Kane from Virginia Beach.
What a privilege.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Councilwoman. Good to speak with you.
Good to speak with you. I just wanted to call Scott today to thank you on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association. I'm the president of the board for the Alzheimer's Association, and I know you have been a big champion and continue to be for the association. And we requested $400 million in research funding, and you were able to fight through for us and get us $500 million in research funding secured. And I thank you, and on behalf of all of those with Alzheimer's in our community and their families, thank you for your leadership in that and your continued friendship, and thank you for your service.
Shannon,
that's all I wanted to say today.
Well, that's really kind of you, and thank you for your service, Shannon. I appreciate what you're doing, and anyone who's serving. Barbara, do we have to pivot?
Yeah, we got one more call. I'm going to try to get it because we only got about 6 minutes left.
do.
So,
okay.
Lainey from Norfolk joins us. Hi, Lainey. You're on the air.
Thank you. Hi, Congressman Rigell.
Hi, Lainey.
Rigell, how are you?
Hi.
I know I'm going to make this very short. I know the show's coming to an end. But I am a concerned parent of a special needs child who is being denied a proper education by Norfolk Public Schools. He's had 20 days of education this entire year. And I just emailed you to help. Who's going to help me now?
Well, Lainey, not knowing the particulars, I'll do all that I can. And if you would like, please contact us at the Congressional office, and I'll do what we can on that end. And this isn't me avoiding the issue, but oftentimes things like that are principally, not exclusively, but principally guided at the state and local level. And but we'll do all we can at the federal level. And I know it's a tough, hard enough parenting, but when you have a special needs child, that's a heavy load there.
Absolutely. So you're giving back the money that you made in
Well,
Congress?
I'm giving back
right?
a good portion of it, and I really don't call attention to it. But I remember at boot camp 1978, there wasn't one thing that our drill instructors asked us to do that they didn't do themselves. There was this principle of leadership by example, and our country's in a tough fiscal situation, and to get out of it, I'd say that pretty much everybody's going to be touched by it just a little bit. I mean, we can protect the poorest of the poor, and we should. But to get out of this, we're going to have some leadership by example. And so I'm giving back about $50,000 every term to the Treasury. Looking back on it, there could have been a better investment. Maybe I could have sent the money somewhere else. But it was my way of saying I'm not in this. I turned down the retirement and other things. I just wasn't trying to get something. I wanted to serve, pull really hard, and then come home. But as mentioned, I've learned so much. I mean, whether it's Alzheimer's and frankly the need not to do just what we're doing, but to literally double the funding to about $2 billion from about $660 million. And by the way, it was bipartisan on the committee that I serve on that took it to $660 million for research. But this is common ground. If somebody understands the facts of this terrible disease, we should be investing in that. So with all the things that I've learned over the last, it'll be 7.5 years, particularly the 6 in Congress, I feel like I've been entrusted with something. I need to use it wisely. And so I'm going to keep fighting to help our country.
So are you guys going back into the car business?
No, we're out.
No.
And I think this is making Teri just a little bit nervous. Maybe you can have me on every now and then just to get me out of the house. But I like business. It's kind of it keeps the mind sharp, and we've done some things with some commercial property, and I enjoy that. And I enjoy mentoring young people and bringing them along, and that's a real joy for me. And so I see me doing some of that along the way. But my real heart right now is this.
You know what's
country.
going on? Every nonprofit is going board member.
A call or two's come in.
I'm sure.
But I do know this, that I think because of the nature where we are as a country, the intensity of all this has been pretty acute. And I would like, and indeed, I need some time, I think, to decompress a little bit. And again, think. about our country and try to help it, help all of us.
So, Teri, now that he's coming back home, how is that going to change your life on a day-to-day basis?
I'm not sure exactly.
You know, they say sometimes with wives, husbands and wives who are on deployment, and they're used to not having the spouse around. Right. And so when they come home for a while, it's like, isn't it time for you to go back on deployment again?
I'm looking forward to it, though.
Well, we've been best friends for 34 plus years.
That's
so
fantastic.
I'm sure we'll navigate this. And but, you know, I'd like the listeners to know this, because if we sat down as a family, we've kind of done this informally, but if we said, you know, knowing what we know now, would we have made the same decision with all of the, you know,
everything
the trials?
that's happening?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The answer would be yes. Mm-hmm. And so I would say to those listeners today, if something is rumbling in your heart and in your mind about public service, please run with that as far as it should go. Maybe talking to family members or people you respect, because this is an hour in our country in which we need really good men and women at every level: school board, a city council, nonprofit boards in our community. All the way around.
Well, it has been a pleasure. I can't believe this hour has flown by so quickly, and I so enjoy talking with both of you and knowing both of you. So thank you so much for being with us here on Another View. And we will have you back because you're going to do a book tour, so we have to do that.
The pressure's on now.
The pressure is
I gotta finish it.
Absolutely, and we will be right back.
Yo, fellas, y'all ready to do this? Yeah, what's up, guys? Boys, in effect, and it's about time. Yo, let's finish this up.
Good day, everybody. This is Sean Stockman from Boys to Men. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and you are checking out in Norfolk, Virginia, Another View on 89.5 FM.
And welcome back. It's hard to believe that Boys to Men has been performing for 25 years, and they're nowhere near the end of their road. The iconic group is still packing halls and arenas, leaving audiences swaying from side to side and grinning from ear to ear. Our Lisa Godley had the opportunity to talk with the group's talented tenor, Sean Stockman, during their most recent visit to Hampton Roads.
We belong together. You know that I'm right.
We pride ourselves in giving our 100%. We bare our souls. We go hard. And that's what we do. And we hope that energy permeates and that people can feel the same thing.
And they've been doing just that for 25 years, making fans swoon over their smooth harmonies and charming moves.
How could you love me and leave me?
The group's talented tenor, Sean Stockman, says they respect each other's abilities. They give each other space and room to grow. Sean also shared what he believes has been key to their survival.
Patience. It can take you places, and it can help you grow, and it can help you develop muscles that you thought you would never develop, and it can help you to just sit and not always have to react to certain things, but just chill. That's what kept us around. And that's what keeps us around. We don't rush anything. We like to just kind of just sit and chill and wait. Think about it, then go.
Close your eyes, make a wish, and blow out the candlelight.
Often referred to as the most successful boy band of the 90s, Boys to Men took the music industry by storm, netting 4 Grammys, 9 American Music Awards, and 9 Soul Train Awards.
Boys to Men in effect, and it's about time. Yo, let's finish this up.
The talented group of singers formed Boys to Men while they were all students at the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts. Back then, they had 4 members. Bass singer Michael McCary left the group in 2003, citing health and personal problems. Since then, the group has carried on with 3 members, Sean Stockman, Wanye Morris, and Nathan Morris, who are not related. Along the way, they've experienced highs and lows. Stockman says it's been like a pendulum swinging back and forth.
Career milestones, from winning our first Grammy to getting our first platinum plaque, to winning our first American Music Award, to selling out our first arena, to the lows, not sell as many records as we used to certain radio DJs that was in support, but then later on dissed us, to just real life stuff.
The road has taken them from boys to men with wives and children, and they're as busy as ever with a packed tour schedule and constant opportunities to present themselves to a new generation of fans, like when they sang Beauty School Dropout in the television performance of Grease Live.
Beauty school dropout, no graduation day for you. Beauty school
I'm proud of myself, I'm proud of my guys, and I thank God for giving us the strength and at least the patience to deal with a lot of the things that we had to deal with.
And they plan to continue sharing their multi-octave sound as long as their devoted fans will listen, releasing new music with incredible vocals and performing the classics we love on stages around the world.
I'm just happy that people still like what we do after so many years, and just how much the industry tends to kind of go from one thing to the next. It's nice to have found a middle ground where, we're not at the tippy top, but we're definitely not at the bottom. And that's cool. That's the place I think everybody wants to be in their lives or their careers. Just be content where they are, satisfied with what you're doing every day. It's a good feeling.
Oh God, give me no reason. I'm down on bending knee.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
Boys to Men. Wow. 25 years. That takes me back. I have to tell you too. So, just a couple of notices to bring to your attention. The Walk Norfolk Historic Tour has been postponed. It was supposed to happen tomorrow. It's being postponed until June 25th, 2016. Because of inclement weather, tomorrow's June 4th Walk Norfolk Historic Tour has been postponed until Saturday the 25th. It's the same time at 9 a.m., and you can still get online registration at norfolk.gov/Walk Norfolk Chase. Now, this walk goes all throughout Norfolk, takes you on a historic tour, tells you all these different things about the city, but the whole idea is to get people walking and to get the energy going. So that has been postponed until the 25th of June. We really appreciate everyone joining us today for Another View. And there's a great new way that you can access the podcast for Another View. Go to your Android or Apple store and download the new WHRO Media app. There you will find podcasts of any Another View programs, as well as other programs you hear or watch on WHRO Public Media. It's free, so feel free to go and download your app today. And I hope you'll tune in next Thursday, June the 9th at 8 on WHRO TV 15. I'll be hosting Rhythm and Blues 40, a soul spectacular, along with our Chief Development Officer, Philip Perdue. Tune in and support what you love. It's our end of the year fiscal fundraiser here on WHRO TV 15. Next week, Roger, Carol, Will, and Bill join me. It's the Another View Roundtable, full of commentary about today's current events. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Kamaria Mason answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.